That's good.
Hey. Reopen all my agendas. Sorry about this. Is that right? We're gonna wait till we get to this item on the agenda before we put that proposed audience.
Holly still our liaison? Yeah. Is that okay?
Yeah, give me one second, guys. I just, my
Just making sure.
computer just restarted. I want to get the agenda up again.
And I believe most of the individuals are here to talk about the 5 acre rule amendment. You could just open it up for them during that item.
Yeah, thank you. That was the plan. It's perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One more
Do you
thing.
know
Hold
the
on.
Wi-Fi password?
Oh, you spin the board.
I
It
know,
was.
I'm like, where is it? I'm looking.
Yeah, I used to just leave it up there.
You have it.
Is it on the board in the back?
Everything.
Yeah, is the Wi-Fi password
Did you give
behind
that to me
you?
and then I lost it?
Is it like on the, is the
I
Wi-Fi?
just have it on
password?
my phone.
No,
Nobody else needs it.
oh, is it,
Sorry.
On mission.
no,
Oh,
the Wi-Fi password.
hey Doug, do you have the little, when you didn't bring your stuff with?
What, I don't have it.
The Wi-Fi? He's the keeper of the password. He's the last person to have it.
I'm sorry.
You were an important role in the town, for the Wi-Fi password.
2 weeks.
Yeah, welcome to
It's really
Lions.
easy, but I think it's like, well,
It sounds right.
Single-handedly disable the entire town.
I can Sabbath tour, I'm kidding.
Oh, there we go. Holly pasted in the chat. Welcome to Lions. Number
Oh,
two,
there, thank you,
capital L.
Holly.
What
You're
can't
welcome.
Holly do?
Welcome, spelled welcome to as in the number 2 Lions, all one word.
Yeah, we need to have that microphone TV.
Let's get it.
Okay, let's get going. We'll trickle tech issues in as we need. Yeah, we'll call to order. I think because this is a public hearing part, we need to do roll call, please.
Chair Evers,
Present.
Vice Chair Schwartz,
Present.
Commissioner Drysdale,
Present.
Commissioner Scott,
Present.
Commissioner Elson,
Present.
and Commissioner Knight.
Present.
Okay, and maybe it begs a quick announcement to the audience that we do have one vacancy in the planning commission, if any concerned citizens are so inclined.
Mind speaking up just a little bit.
Oh, yeah, it helps if you close the door because of I've not been accused of being a soft speaker much, but I will speak up. I was saying that there is a vacancy in the planning commission. If any concerned citizens are so inclined, you may consider it. The next order on the agenda is audience business. And I know there are quite a few folks here, and I believe most folks here are interested in commenting on the proposed resolution related to what's in the 5 acre rule of annexation. So we'll have a extra time for public comment before that is brought to the commission. So if that's what you're here to speak about, maybe speak your comment. But if you're here to speak on general audience business of any other kind, now would be the time to announce yourself and make a comment. Okay, we'll assume that we'll open up audience business then as a comment section during the resolution. We have approval of minutes for May 13th, May 30th, and June 10th, which is part of the packet. I would accept the motion to pass all of those or approve all of them at once, unless someone would like to enter a motion into one particular meeting minutes for editing or something.
So I would like to make a motion to approve all of the minutes. However, on the condition that they all have some minor nits and at least 2 out of 3 of them need their references to code corrected.
Okay, and are you able to provide those to the town staff for?
Yes, I would like to make the handwriting a little more legible, and then I will email them after this meeting.
Okay,
That makes sense.
But there are also some words that aren't clear that I don't know if you guys want to,
No, I did read that, I did notice a little bit of that too, but I didn't.
yeah, if you just want to let staff figure out what those words should be, or if we should, confirm them now.
Well, there is language in the code that allows staff to make changes to things that have been approved or motioned on, as long as they're not substantive changes. So if it's like a typo or an errant reference to code language, things like that, that can be fixed without having to see the motion again, I believe. And if
Okay,
I'm wrong on that, Andrew can let me know and take it back to another meeting.
Because you don't change the meaning, are they, what, yeah, the action, or,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, we take what's called action minutes, so it's mostly what needs to be captured is what you all are doing, so that we can read those references space.
Okay.
It's no problem.
So the motion is to approve the May 13th, May 30th, and June 10th meeting minutes with edits provided by Commissioner Knapp. Do I have a second?
I'll say,
Second. Okay, all in favor, use your little clicky button on your left.
there it is.
Okay, no, that's okay. It's unanimous.
practice.
All right, motion passes unanimous. Good. Okay, we will move into the general business items, number one, which is introduction of the town's new planner. Planner Bowen, would you take the reins on this?
Sure. Yeah, so I'd just like to introduce Cassidy Davenport. She just came on board, I guess, 2 weeks ago. Just hit the ground running and is, has so far and expected in the future to be a really great, fit for the planning team of two. But no, much appreciated, to take some of the work, effort off just one planner. She's also, part of her time is also code compliance. So we joined those positions together. We had a full-time code compliance, but much of that work was still doing licensing and other kind of more planning work. So we felt it better to just hire a planner, one that has kind of a duty. So Cassidy, if you want to jump on and give a brief introduction, that'd be great.
Hi. Yeah, pretty much what Andrew said. I'm just here to kind of help him out and I guess help anyone else out. And I think all my contact information is listed on the website now. So if anyone needs to contact me, that's how they can do it. But yeah, I'm just excited to be here and to just be learning at this point. It's only been 2 weeks. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, welcome. Any commissioners have a question for Planner Davenport or just get to know her as we go? Okay, sounds good.
Welcome.
All right, moving along. Second item, of general business is resolution 2024-06 PCDC on the recommending Prop 123 affordable attainable housing strategies. And Planner Bowen, do you have a presentation?
Yeah. And it's just going to be, I sent Proposition 123 fact sheet, and those are also within the resolution that was provided. So at our joint meeting with the Board of Trustees and the PCDC, as you all know, one charge that came down from the Board of Trustees was for the Planning Commission or PCDC to vet through some of the DOLA strategies. And so kind of frame up that context, we're currently right now, Prop 123 has 3-year grant cycles. So we're currently 1/2 of a year through a 3-year cycle. Outside of our commitment, which you all are familiar with, of developing 10 affordable/attainable homes, we also have kind of 2 other charges. Number 2 is to, at the least, adopt an expedited review process for affordable/attainable housing development. So that's one that we have to do. That's one of the direct deliverables from Prop 123. The other is when the commitment period is over, we will, planning staff, or if we have, I know I've discussed kind of this joint housing personnel between Ned or Linda Lines with you all before, but whoever is in that housing role will kind of have to justify where, if we have developed housing, we have to make sure that kind of environmental sustainability, not citing affordable units just out, you know, in the perimeter, but kind of mixing those units within the rest of town. And the other deliverable has escaped my mind. But the first two are kind of most important. So kind of in front of you tonight, is a resolution. I did not provide, because I wanted this to be kind of an open discussion to go through, these strategies, but all of these that were provided, in that one sheet and within the resolution are directly from DOLA's website and implementation. I did highlight in the resolution, kind of what I view as, and maybe those didn't come through in the resolution, I don't know, but, kind of the lowest hanging fruit, if you will. And then the green, the ADU section is something that we've already achieved. Somewhat of a moot point now because, we would have had to achieve it due to state law changes anyways. So we still need to vet through those. Again, we only need one strategy, and that's an expedited review. But Cassidy and I met with Robin DeFalco last week. And she said that in order to be competitive for Prop 123 funding, which is the reason why we've opted into this program, in order to be truly competitive, kind of the more and meaningful strategies that we as a town adopt and implement, our competition level goes way up. One other note before we kind of dive in, we will, as of right now, tentatively, we will be hopefully having a joint work session with the BOT and the PCDC with representatives from DOLA to come and discuss the implementation of Prop 123 and kind of how that funding works, and kind of what all this means directly from the people who have drafted and are working closely. As a personal note, Proposition 123 is fairly new to me. So I'm still myself kind of learning what all this means, and it's fairly new to the state. So a lot of the strategies are being teased out in my time right now. So we're the state's guinea pigs. I'm just kidding. That's not, but we're trying to figure it out how to do these things on our own. So with that, we'll just kind of break in. In the one sheet that I sent, all of those are hyperlinked. I hope that you all had some time to go through those. If not, we can go through them. And I will say the last bullet, the other novel, innovative, creative approaches, housing authorities. I believe we're also right now implementing or trying to implement that strategy with the Peak to Peak Housing Authority. So a little update on that. We received $104,000 from DOLA to do a feasibility study. We didn't directly, Gilpin County was directed those funds. But Gilpin, Nederland, and Lyons are all joint partners in that grant, along with the smaller communities along the Peak to Peak, and possibly Clear Creek County as well. So I think that's one that we can also, that's a very low hanging fruit because that's one that we've already worked on. But with that, we can just open it up for discussion and we can go through them if that's okay with you. Oh, yeah, sure.
Claire?
So I'm sorry, please, Commissioner.
I have a question, or two questions actually. The first is, do you have a general, or could you give us a general sense of the timeline that's involved? Are there deadlines that are looming? And the second is, could you have one strategy, but more than one project within that strategy?
So as far as the strategies go, and as far as this commitment cycle through Prop 123, we have to do our final reporting to DOLA November 28th of 26. So we've got time. It's just in order, to achieve kind of meaningful goals in this cycle, I think it would behoove the town to try to get these started earlier rather than later. Because really, what you'll be doing if we wait, or not you, but what the town and community will be doing is we'll just be setting those up for that next cycle. As far as cutoffs go, just want to be clear, if we do not meet our Prop 123 goals, our commitments, so the ones that I listed, by November, either 26th or 28th of 26. If we do not, we're disqualified for the first year of the next cycle. And what that doesn't seem that punitive, but then we only have 2 years to meet our next commitment. So it just kind of backs up a possible failure, so.
Just for clarification, the commitments, it's a 10-unit development commitment, right?
That's correct.
And that's split over 3 years, so 334, 343,
Yeah.
1000, whatever we need to do to get there.
Yeah, and we do not have to report annually, so we could hit the jackpot and November 26th have a building permit submitted. And it's not the time of certificate of occupancy, it's just we have to have permits in hand.
And do we need to show any measurable progress from our strategies to the type of development that we support? So I guess what I'm asking is, are we tied to the strategies in any meaningful way?
No, I think the strategies are at least, and I can't speak for DOLA, but I think the strategies are there to kind of support our community's efforts to get those 10 units, but they're separate commitments.
Okay, so if we decided to like one strategy, we make no measurable progress over the next 3 years, there's no repercussions for that, as long as we hit our development goals.
So we have to we have to at least adopt the expedited review.
Right.
And we have to develop at least 10 affordable attainable units.
And are those deed restricted? Is that how they're defining it?
So again, at our meeting, you'll get a lot more, but I was introduced to this idea of naturally occurring affordability. So as long as the town staff can justify that these are indeed affordable. So if we have an ADU, it was my understanding that ADUs had to be deed restricted, but that's not necessarily the case. If we can prove that the rental affordability of the first person that moved into that unit was 60% AMI, then it counts and it doesn't have to be deed restricted. It can just be because of the size of the unit or the location that counts. Again, that takes staff justifying that in a narrative and DOLA approving. It's not, a silver bullet, but they are counting naturally occurring affordability.
And our AMI is Boulder County, right?
Yes.
That shouldn't be difficult.
And then if it's a for sale unit, I think it's 100% AMI.
Since this is part of, it's a resolution and it's part of the public process, we do have to submit a motion to discuss it as a commission. So right now we can ask questions about the presentation, questions to staff for clarification, but as far as the merit of the resolution and which strategies we should pick, whether or not the ones Andrew proposed are the right ones, that we should save for discussion of a motion. If you guys are okay with that. So if there are any other questions for Andrew on the presentation, we can do that now. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion, but other questions first.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is there, does the state or is there any goals for do communities have certain goals, like certain percentage of housing be considered affordable? I'm just curious, because some communities have done a better job of trying to meet those goals. So it's, I know we're not counting past credit, but it's just I'm just wondering, certain communities have done a better job of trying to create more affordable housing opportunities. I don't know.
Sure.
I guess I know they already, maybe I'm answering my own question is that they already, we are counting certain projects we've already supported, but I don't know.
So I believe across the board in Boulder County, our goal is 12% affordable.
Okay, so they do, okay.
Prop 123 is 3% a year of development and 9% per cycle.
which is the 3 years ago.
Yes.
Okay, so there are goals. Okay.
I think each municipality that opts in, you report your baseline, and that's what the 3% is.
Yep.
Okay.
And every grant cycle, you have a new baseline that using DOLA's metrics. So it's not always gonna be 10 units, you know, it could be 6, it could be 20, who knows, you know, in future cycles. But you establish a new baseline every cycle.
Well, I would like to make a motion for the PCD to approve resolution 2024-06 in support of Proposition 123.
I'll second.
Okay, we need to use our little buttons, so.
Would you mind restating that motion? Just,
Oh, did I say it incorrectly?
Discussion before we vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, of course, yeah.
Oh, okay, that's right.
I would like to move that the PCDC support the resolution 2024-6 in support of Proposition 123.
yeah, I think that works, just as long as it's understood that as part of that motion, you all will be offering up 4 recommended strategies.
Okay.
And second still apply?
Yes,
Okay,
second.
sorry about the much vote, I was just having a non-thinking moment. So now we can discuss the motion to approve. So yeah, Andrew's clarification is the point of this. Board of Trustees has asked us to recommend 3 or 4 strategies, I think was the words. And so the way to do this is either to have a public workshop and discuss it, and then Andrew take the recommendation as staff directive. And I think in this case, I was asked that we do it via resolution, so that's why we're being so formal about it. I don't know why, but that's fine. That's I think a great way of doing things. So Andrew, you know, from our joint meeting, proposed some of these strategies that we should consider. And those are the ones that are highlighted here in Exhibit A. The green one, obviously, Andrew said already, is the one we already did. And then the 4 others that are in yellow are ones that we can consider. We are required to do the first one highlighted in yellow, which is the expedited development review. So really, we're just proposing 3 more, maybe 2 more if we don't feel like there are 3. And because it's a resolution, there had to be something to resolve as part of it. So Andrew took the initiative to do this. So I think it's our job to discuss and decide if we are equipped to make the recommendation that Andrew proposed, and if we agree with how it's authored, or if we think we maybe need more time to understand it, that's also an option as well. But the motion is to approve, so I'll open it up to discussion. Or Chair Bryson, Commissioner Bryson.
See,
I did do it all the time.
As I understand, you can have projects or efforts that are under the strategies that we select, but we could have others. Is that true? And that would still count toward, if they result in units, then those units would count. Or,
yeah, and so again, it's important to note that these strategies are not necessarily tied to unit development. They're 2 different deliverables. It's hopeful that unit development will be, you know, enticed by these strategies, but they're 2 separate commitments the town has.
and then the second question gets back to, you can have apparently multiple projects within any given strategy.
Mhm.
Right? So, for example, and this is just an example, I'm not recommending it at this point, but the joining the peak to peak effort.
Mhm.
Which would be part of that,
I think it's the
other
last one.
novel, innovative, creative approaches kind of thing.
Mhm.
But for example, working directly with Boulder County on their commitment numbers could also be a creative,
Yeah.
innovative thing, and that could count as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, as I understand, they're not binding at all. It's just us saying, oh yeah, here are the ones that we're gonna pursue in good faith.
Yep.
And I think it's really just kind of the my interpretation, help me if I'm wrong, is that this is part of Prop 123 way of not just saying, okay, now develop affordable housing, but saying, okay, here's some ways in which you can
That's
do
correct.
it. Go educate yourselves, basically.
They gave us the target and then they gave us the arrows to put in the quiver. We just
Yeah.
decide which arrows to use.
We can make our own arrows.
Yeah,
not
we
using
can
the
make
other
our
ones.
own, and that's what, you know, the novel language is for.
I like the proposed strategies you have highlighted in yellow. Because I think I don't see a fiscal impact of these, like the decreased development fees. And the density bonus and the inclusionary zoning ordinance. You know, I think just really speak to additional housing that could be market rate, but just, you know, also a signal that we want some of those units to be a little bit more dense and help us get to 10.
Sure.
So I appreciated thinking about that from the fiscal responsibility lens.
I think it would be good to get more education around all of these. Maybe we set our strategies now and change them later as we learn more, or maybe we learn more and start to, you know, hone in our focus with more education behind us.
Yeah, I don't think if we pick these strategies, like you said, the 10 have to result from these. There's no downside to that. So.
My question is, no, just,
Yes.
sorry. So increasing our capacity, was in the page before Exhibit A, and to me, that sounds like maybe we want to hire more staff or consultants or something to start getting involved now. And so,
Which one was increasing?
the full, oh, you know what, it's in the fact sheet. So if you go to the very last, paragraph on the first page, it says grants to local governments to increase the capacity of local government planning departments.
Yep.
Responsible for process. So are we by, going forward with these strategies saying, yes, we want to grow our government planning departments to just start working on these things before we really know if they're where we want to focus?
Yeah, so right now we have 2 planning capacity grants,
Yeah.
one awarded, which is with Gilpin County, so that was through this grant program. The other is having a joint housing staff between us and Netherland, so 20 hours. So, yeah, I mean, we'd be increasing not the capacity of the planning department, just because it has to be housing focused, but that's what we're using those, hopefully we will use that grant.
Regardless of which strategies we pick now, like.
Well, hopefully, you know, the hope behind this position is that person, if we're awarded these funds, can kind of, because each one of these is going to take code rewrites. It's going to take, there's a lot more process to these than just saying, these are what we want to do. And that's the hope of that person between us and Ned, because we don't have enough work for 40 hours, but we have enough work for 20 hours. And it's taking that housing component off of Cassidy and I, and having somebody that is much more qualified to talk about the housing space than me. But we're not committing to hiring someone through.
To your earlier point, though, sorry, we have a joint board of trustees meeting coming up in a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks.
July 15th.
July 15th, where there will be a representative from DOLA to talk about Proposition 123 for the express purpose of educating our board more on the ins and outs of it, beyond what's on the fact sheet, you know, so we can ask questions, and planner bonus doesn't have to take the burden of being the supreme expert of Proposition 123, which is a lot to ask.
Which I'm not.
So there is an argument to be made that this is not appropriate timing for the resolution, because I don't think the planning commission group of volunteers has inherently any more knowledge than the board of trustees does. So like, I personally don't feel, and what I'm getting to is I personally don't feel comfortable making these strategy recommendations based on knowledge that I don't have. So I personally, in this for discussion, would be fine with voting down this resolution and not proceeding with a formal strategy recommendation, because I don't feel equipped to make it. Or Commissioner Drexel.
One thought is to make the strategies amendable. in other words, to, amend the motion to say that the strategies selected are amendable and that the PCDC will be pursuing continued education about them and will amend them to most appropriately represent the course of action that the town is planning.
If I may, and I'm not telling the board what to do whatsoever, since we have to adopt the expedited review process, if that could be one that comes out, so staff can, but it's gonna be up to the BOT anyways, but, never mind, I'm thinking out loud.
Okay.
That's totally fine.
Can I just ask why this is a formal resolution and not just a workshop item where we would give the staff directive to communicate strategies? Because this just seems like an odd way of overly formalizing something that's just a recommendation anyway.
I can't answer that question at that time, but I can get that from the DOT if necessary.
It's okay. I think it depends on what comes out of the motion here, but I appreciate that. Please.
I think approving this resolution after our joint meeting with the DOT, unless there is some reason why we need to do it sooner, this would be a quick thing to approve once we have more information.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Could we ask the liaison,
Oh, yeah, of course.
DOT liaison, to help us understand that better?
You bet. I thought you'd never ask, Barney. Yeah, so I am not 100% sure why this is presented as a resolution. I think the board wanted the PCDC's recommendations on strategies. And I want to give just a little bit of color when it comes to innovative strategies and kind of thinking outside the box here as well. The mayor of Broomfield just let me know that Broomfield received a check for $1.5 million from Prop 123 monies to help with a down payment assistance program that they decided to put in place. And I'm not suggesting that we do the same thing, but just to kind of encourage y'all to do some outside the box thinking when it comes to that.
And building on that, DOLA also with the down payment assistance program has rental assistance as well that they offer citizens that live in Prop 123 commitment communities. So.
And who's administering those, that their housing authority? Yeah,
We don't have a housing.
right.
We need
I
one.
mean, just for clarification, I think those financial tools are part of the 60% that are being administered by Chaplain.
Yeah.
Where this list of strategies are related to the Division of Housing, which is under TOLA.
But I think in terms of like application process, I think funds have been depleted currently. There are no funds we can apply for at this time. Is that correct? Like we would have to apply for something in the future in terms of, you know, solidifying our strategies now versus in 2 or 4 weeks. It's not going to change our application process for any funds.
Yeah, we don't, I mean, outside of the local planning capacity grant, we don't have any funds that we've submitted or applied for.
Yeah, please.
So one approach could be to, again, vote on the, resolution itself, but then direct staff to communicate to the BOT that the PCDC is in support of pursuing 123 and understanding the strategies in more detail, to recommend, once we have that information.
I love that idea. Any other thoughts or discussion on the motion to approve?
I hear that. I think we also need to be very knowledgeable about this, as knowledgeable as staff.
Well, I will add, if you do click on those links, you'll get a like short 1, 2, 4 or so pages on each of those, and they show examples from urban, rural, and mountain communities that helped me kind of understand what this could look like. So to your point, some good learning in there for those who have the time.
Do we need more discussion before we feel comfortable voting on the motion to approve? No. Well, it's a motion to
Yeah,
approve.
yeah, you're right, I'm sorry.
Is if the motion doesn't pass, is that a presumed deny or do we have to present another motion?
No, I think that's,
Okay.
sorry, I
That's
didn't
fine.
mean to interrupt.
No, that's great. Okay, so, go ahead and put in your votes, please. You on the right clicker, to the right is yes, to the left is no. All in, okay. Oops, sorry, no, I did not do my job. So the motion does not pass in a vote of 5-1. Okay. And then we have the staff directive is clear, Planner Bowen from the discussion. Yes. Great, thank you. Thank you all. Okay, and the third item of journal business is the resolution 2024-07 PCDC, which concerns an ordinance amending the bunch of numbers and letters around annexation. So we don't normally have audience business move to the middle of the general business, since most audiences here to comment on this resolution. Before we get into the staff presentation, that'd be correct, Andrew? Audience business first. Before we get into the staff presentation on the resolution, I'd like to open the floor to any audience member who would like to come and speak. We didn't do a sign-in sheet, so it might have to be, well, there is a sign-in sheet. Okay, well, do you mind handing it over, or Planner Bowen, if you don't mind doing it? You did such a great job last time, if you don't mind also calling me.
We came in a little bit late. And you can just,
Yeah.
you can just step up and I'll write your names down. It's fine.
Yeah, when we're done going down the list, those who came in after and didn't sign up, you'll have time. We'll get to everyone. There are no formalized rules around the amount of time to speak, but we ask, somewhere between 3 and 4 minutes is usually enough time if that's comfortable for you. If you need a little more time, that's fine. And, out of the respect of everyone's time, if there's a overwhelming redundancy of the same comment over and over again, you're always welcome to reference someone else's previous comment, or you can say it again if you'd like. That's always fine too. You might go on first person.
Oh, yeah, Marty Gold.
Well, Marty, while you approach, please say your name and your address for the record before
Hi,
you
I'm
speak.
Martin Gould. I live in 1568 Steamboat Valley Road. I'm not in the town of Lyons. I'm in what I consider the encroachment area up Steamboat Valley Road. I'd like to make a couple of points. And the first is, in my opinion, this is an obvious moving against the spirit of the original resolution, the 5-acre rule. And I want you folks to understand that when people in this town voted for the 5-acre rule, this whole concept of splitting away something really goes against that. The way I see it, the people in Steamboat Valley who have been really good stewards of the land, and some of them have set aside areas that are like conservation easements. They don't need to be encroached on in this way. I think the town has to solve its problems without sectioning out pieces of property like they're carving up a carcass. And, I'd like to point out that the people who are trying to get their property annexed have very little investment in this community anymore. They might live in another state. They may have a lot of property. They want to carve it up. They want to make as much money as they can. They want to bring in a developer who is also not vested in this community. I may not live in the town of Lyons, but I pay close to $1,000 a year in library tax. I support the fire department. I pay into the school system. And when we bought property on Steamboat Valley Road, we didn't expect this type of encroachment to move in on us. I think this is irresponsible growth, and I think it is favoring people who just don't have a vested interest in our community. I don't think that the businesses in this town need more business. The restaurants are packed. We don't need to turn this place into the kind of bedroom community where everybody just drives to Boulder, they drive to Longmont, everything grows. I say it's like a cancer. You have to stop it. You can't just let it drive itself. And so that's my opinion. And, you know, when the town gets together and they pay deference to the Native Americans, they say we're living on their land and we should respect their land. And so when I look at all of you, I really call upon you to maybe evoke that great spirit that says, we're here to protect our resources, not to turn what's a potential watershed that just creates all kinds of other problems of density and traffic and really lowers the value of living in this community to roll over to development. So this is all I can appeal to you, somebody who's lived here for over 30 years. I see what's happened. I've seen how much growth the town has. In my opinion, if you want to solve the issues of affordable housing, do it within your city limits. And don't bring in developers and carve up our land like a piece of meat. So please, I hope you understand that. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
I want to go outside of Robert's rules. I know we've opened. I want to, because there's no context within the resolution. So I want to make sure that you all understand, just because I haven't given, I didn't give any presentation. But the gist of this is that during IGA negotiations, and it's always been the availability, is to do an illegal subdivision within the county and then bring in less than 5 acres or 5 acres into the town without going through the process. So this is an amendment to try to mitigate that pressure on the community.
Thanks for the context.
Yeah, no problem.
Sure.
If I could, I'm Mark Brownman on 633 First Avenue, and I'm the one that drafted the language, and I had talked with Chair Evers about doing a little historical context, sort of a background of how we got a 5 acre rule and kind of its history and lines. It won't be 4 minutes, but I'll keep it less than 10, I promise. I guess it's true probably in every small town, probably big cities as well, that for probably the course of their history, the issue of how much do we grow and how is always an issue. For modern day Lions, from doing a lot of research at Laverne's Museum, I think it's fair to say that the first proposal in somewhat modern times for a huge addition to the town of Lyons was back in the mid 1980s. There were a pair of developers who owned 1,800 acres in Dow Flats out towards MX, out northeast of town. And they floated various proposals by both the county commissioners and the Lyons Board of Trustees. And important to note that at that time, or shortly thereafter, that area was in Lyons planning area. So the county was looking to the town, just like we are with the IGA, what should we do in this area? One of the things floated out was 30,000 new residents over a 30-year period, or 8,000 to 10,000 residents in a shorter term, a 375 acre industrial development, a large lake with a destination hotel on it. As you can imagine, the Lyons was much smaller back at that time. That was very controversial at both the town and the county level. The Board of Trustees never accepted any of those proposals, but they got a lot of attention in Lyons and at the county level when there were multiple controversies in Boulder County. In the mid-90s through early 2000s, that's when Lyons' 3 largest subdivisions really began to be built out: Lyons Valley Park, Eagle Canyon, Stone Canyon. Those citizens' votes were required on those because there wasn't a 5 acre rule back then. But in particular, Stone Canyon became controversial as to how big it had been annexed actually in 1974, but it was to be developed in several phases. The first phase of Stone Canyon is what you see there now. There were additional phases proposed to phase 2 from the property being annexed. The citizens actually voted in 1994 to de-annex 40 acres of Stone Canyon that had already been annexed into the town. As these subdivisions grew built out, there was more and more discussion locally of how much do we grow? Is this enough? Do we have too much being built? Or are we losing our roots and that type of thing? In September of 2000, that coalesced into a citizens initiative to adopt the 5 acre rule. that any property of more than 5 acres annexed into town would require a citizen vote. That resolution, that citizens initiative actually passed 254 to 157, 62%. What you see in the municipal code now is a result of that initiative. The board then adopted ordinances to implement what the citizens had passed. That initiative and the resulting code provisions got put to the test in April of 2002, when a proposal was put before citizens to approve the annexation of Stone Canyon Phase 2. It was a carefully crafted project that included some townhomes, so not all expensive homes, 8 big market rate lots that would have sold for top dollar. So the concept of some market rate to support some less expensive housing was included here back then in 2002. Most town officials lined up behind that and said it was a good deal for the town. They were going to set aside some park space and that type of thing. And so it was highly promoted as this being a good thing for the town, bring in more population, help the local businesses. It was defeated 191 to 134, 59% margin by the citizens. That was the last residential annexation proposed under the 5-acre rule. Nothing else has come forward. Planet Bluegrass Farm annexation was approved in August of 2017, but that was really a proposal basically to not develop that property. It was called Planet Bluegrass Farm, and there's a couple of buildings being allowed on it and that kind of thing, but it's not certainly residential development. So in 2010, the comp plan had a provision in there that suggested in very carefully hedged language that we should evaluate the feasibility of and public support for changing the requirement that all private annexations that exceed 5 acres must be approved by a vote. That was an economic development strategy. Then in 2016, the Lions Primary Planning Area Plan, the LPPA, had something similar, and it said, evaluate the 5-acre vote in light of current market conditions and findings from this work associated with the town's fiscal health and limited inventory of viable development sites. And that same document suggested that development was most economically feasible in the eastern corridor, but not so much so in South St. Vrain area or Apple Valley. So following on that, in August of 2017, in December of 2017, after the Planet Bluegrass Farm vote, the Board of Trustees adopted Ordinance 1020, this is in December of 2017, that changed the 5-acre rule minimum to 10 acres in the eastern corridor. That followed up on the LPPA study that said the best place you can develop is in the eastern corridor. And it was felt that the 5-acre rule was potentially a hindrance of development up there, so it got changed. So we really have a 10-acre rule at this point in the one part of proposed development that the LPPA says is most feasible. In 2017, I was on the planning commission before I joined the board the first time. Future trustee Edding was the chair, future mayor Angelo was on the PCDC. And a property owner came in. It was the then owner of what's now known as the Carpenter property, which is in top of Steamboat Valley Drive. It's slightly more than 5 acres. The owner at that time, is not the current owner, proposed of subdividing it up into smaller lots and market rate housing. And one of the things the PCDC informed him then is, wait, your property is more than 5 acres. You'll have to go to a vote to annex. His response was, I've thought of that. I've talked to one of my neighbors about shaving off a slice off the edge and being slightly less than 5 acres and then being able to annex without a vote. Unanimously, the PCDC said, we don't do things like that in Lyons. That's a clear end run around what the voters have adopted here, and that's not going to fly. And he didn't go forward, and property was eventually sold. Fast forward, I guess 6 years, January 2023, an email from town chief planner David Kennett to town administrator Victoria Simonson discovered in a citizen core request said, in the meantime, and this is getting to the IGA negotiations, in the meantime, before annexation, perhaps we could change around the Lyons Municipal Code's language on annexation so it doesn't have to go to a vote, or at least raise the acreage to say 50 acres. In this body's meeting in February 2024, again in the context of IGA discussions, Planner Bowen advised that we are fine with only carving out a little bit, which makes it an easier sell. Because of that background, in February and March, when citizens became concerned about the draft IGA, did their core requests. Most of you, or perhaps all of you, are at those citizens meetings. One of the things that most concerned the citizens was this suggested carve out of 4.9, 4.7, whatever it is, acres out of a larger tract to be done by the county, and then the smaller tract to be annexed into town without a vote. One of the things that I suggested at a candidates forum and followed up on as soon as I was elected to the board is, although the existing 5-acre rule in the code prevents serial annexations, you couldn't divide a 40-acre tract up into 8 5-acre tracts and then do 4.9 acre tracts and then do 4.9 here, 4.9 there, 4.9 there. That's prevented. But the loophole is that the first annexation, not the second one, but the first annexation of a carved out less than 5-acre property doesn't have to have a vote. Many citizens consider this a loophole. I suggested it to the candidates forum that this be pursued. And that's what resulted in this. This language would say a less than 5-acre tract carved out of a larger tract since September of 2000, and that is the date of the 5-acre rule citizens vote, would be subject to a vote. I did it that way as an objective measure rather than trying to say if there was a carve out with the intent of avoiding the 5-acre or vote on the 5-acre rule, you can't judge people's intent. So it's an objective criterion. And I'll close here shortly. I just would remind this commission, as I'll remind the board when it gets there, that Lyons has a long history of citizen initiatives. The 5-acre rule is one of them. Voting down the Stone Canyon annexation was another one. The 1 cent for parks rule was a voter initiated provision in Lyons that, as far as I know, has no counterpart elsewhere, but 1 cent of our sales tax goes strictly to parks by voter rule. There was a voter initiative in 2015 that limits what the town can do with its parks and open space land. No more than 1/2 acre can be rezoned or used for non-parks purposes without a citizen's vote. And that was a very controversial, hard fought thing for the people that were here. I happen to be on the losing side of that, but it's the law. So what is foreseeable if we can't fix this loophole? And I've heard the sentiments already from the citizens group that was very active in February and March is if we leave this loophole there, I think you will see a citizens initiative to do at a minimum the same thing, which is a carved out less than 5-acre property would require a vote. There was strong sentiment expressed in several of those, in several citizen meetings to do more than that. And the sentiment that was initially expressed by a number of members of the citizens group was, let's keep it simple. Let's do a citizens initiative that says every annexation requires a citizen's vote, period. So that if an annexation like was done years ago for Parks Hardware and what's now the Circle K, or what's on the table now for the Tebow property in the Eastern Corridor, every single annexation would require a citizen's vote, which would, in my opinion, scare away a lot of prospective economic development in Lyons. So there's a risk to not doing this, which is you may get a citizen initiative that's worse. So I think this solves the loophole problem. I don't think it will affect any properties. I think it's a clear objective standard, and that's why I intend to propose it to the board. Any questions? I'm actually Commissioner Drystep was around for a lot of this, so if he feels necessary to correct or supplement, have at it, and I'll defer to his advanced or superior experience. Nobody doubt.
I will just say that I'm very pleased that you introduced a discussion about the 10-acre rule in the Eastern Corridor. It is specifically for the Eastern Corridor, and that was a vote of the town. So respecting that as a vote of the town is important as well.
That's one.
Should we continue on the roll for public comment?
I don't have anyone else.
Oh, okay, well, I guess first come, first serve, or feel like standing up and approaching the podium, please do. And again, since it's been a while, name and address for the record before you speak.
I'm Ed Russell, 770 Steamboat Valley Road. And I think, Trustee Browning covered everything, so I'll be short and sweet here. That I strongly support this amendment and that I would urge the commission to approve this. So that makes it short and sweet and can get on to the next person. So thank you for your time.
I basically want to say ditto. I am Catherine Russell at 770 Steamboat Valley Road. I did have a little bit more to say, but trustee Browning definitely covered everything. So I will just basically end it as I respectfully request that the PCDC approve this proposed amendment to preserve citizen approval of larger annexations to give voice to the very people who are directly impacted by these decisions. Thank you.
I feel foolish saying something. My name's Cindy Fisher, 125 Eagle Valley Drive of the aforementioned Stone Canyon subdivision that if I was here, I would have voted it down, but I didn't live in Lyons. We've been here 10 years, but I'm kind of new to knowing what's going on in the town. And this is gonna sound so naive, but shocked and disappointed. People who are involved with the government in town keep telling me they're doing what the citizens want. And I stumbled into those meetings because I had a tiny little question about which map takes precedence. And I feel like they're saying what's true. If you're doing what the citizens want, why do an end around of the 5-acre rule? It seems so plain and easy that you should just do what the citizens ask you to do when they voted for the 5-acre rule. I know it's naive, I know it's stupid, but I was naive and stupid when I moved to this town. I thought it was beautiful and lovely and people got along and they kind of wanted to work together, but it doesn't feel that way anymore. And I'm really disappointed. Thanks.
Anyone else like to make public comment on the resolution? And we also have members potentially on Zoom. Raise your hand indicated if you can, and if not, you can always just turn on your camera and let us know you want to speak. No? Okay. Going once, going twice, and we can always make time too if there's a burning desire within reason. Okay, is there additional staff comment or presentation, Andrew? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but.
No, that's fine. Yeah, so I think trustee Browning went through the proposed language, but I just want to go through that. So this is a direct insert to section 15(1)(340), annexations to be approved by the voters. So this language does not affect the 10-acre rule for the Eastern Corridor. It's tagged just for the 5-acre rule here in town. But that language, for the record, for you all in the public, the add-on will be, it is further provided that any annexation of property smaller than 5 acres, which has been subdivided, severed, or otherwise carved out from a property of 5 acres or more since September 5th, 2000, shall not be exempt from this section. So that's the language, surgical insertion to the code. So as far as, I don't have a staff recommendation. I'll open that up for your all's discussion. But I just wanted to hear your all's opinions.
Great, thank you. If there's any questions for staff or even in this case for an applicant, we can do that before we set a motion in place, but questions for staff or the speakers might be around clarification items, not necessarily debate of merit. Yeah, it's Commissioner Joseph.
When I read this, it only references the 5-acre rule. But if you only read this portion of the code, it would seem that it applies to everything. And so I was wondering if there should be a phrase of some reference to the section of the code that describes the 10-acre rule in the Eastern Corridor of Just so it doesn't come across as, you read this and it's 5 acres everywhere, which I incidentally, I support wholeheartedly.
So let me open up the code here. 3, I didn't put it on the resolution just because it wasn't affected, but I'll share my screen here from the wrong screen, just a second. So, number 3 directly follows, the addition on 2. So it says any annexation of property smaller than 10 acres in size that's located in the eastern corridor sub area.
So that wasn't on.
No, just because there was no change.
So,
So,
well,
so the addition is in this subsection right here, 2 only.
So it's followed by
So,
description of the 10 acres in the eastern quarter.
yeah, so you'll have 2 with the added,
great, okay, so that wasn't it, okay, if that's.
yeah, so
what
it'll,
we're
it'll
voting on, then-
It'll read just like it does now, just with that added section, or not section, but added language.
Good to know. Thank you. Yeah, please.
I have 2 questions if you don't mind. The first one is, all right, so what would the town look like if parcels that were less than 5 acres and that are currently, well, that were in existence prior to 2000 were annexed into town in sort of a checkerboard fashion, if that's possible? And if so, would that then put pressure on the other parcels to be annexed in as well?
You're saying like out like a satellite property that doesn't touch the town's property?
Yes, and so you're starting to have like these like peppered sporadic annexations, and then, so it's checkerboard.
Yeah, so we can't, so in order to annex, regardless of 5 acre rule, 10 acre rule, you have to have what's called 1/6 continuity. So if you're going to annex a piece of property into the town, what the baseline requirement is that at least 1/6 of the border of the property that you are trying to bring into town has to be contiguous with town limits. So you can't have kind of these spot annexations.
But you could have like a snake-wise
What
flow.
do they call it, a flagpole, we have the towns, is that?
Plan, Brian, could you speak to the referral process from the county on that annexation or on adjacent property development or changes?
So
Basically, if someone were to do that, they were to bifurcate their property or split it up into many different pieces prior to attempting to annex, we would be a referral agency on that process.
we would be, and as far as flagpole lots go, though, just the sheer character and shape of flagpole lots, they often, unless they have some weird, shape, they often do not meet that 1/6 continuity rule, just because they often, have the pole, and that throws off that metric.
What is a flagpole lot?
A flagpole, imagine a
No,
flag on a pole.
No, no,
and
no.
You connect a piece of property to town using, a very small strip of land that connects to a larger piece of land.
the water, not the maintenance. There is a flagpole property.
And you'll also see it often attached to, when towns have right of way. Because you can also use right of way if it's the town's right of way to connect an annex. So you'll have a small piece of property that follows a right of way to a larger piece of property as well. But flagpoles just, in planner speak, I guess, just represent irregular lot shapes.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yes. One more, so, and forgive me for being a bit wary about this, but I worked for lawyers for over a dozen years, and I watched them creatively structure financing and acquisitions. And a lot of things came out of it. So I wonder if, that any annexation of property owned by the town is exempt from this section. Could an owner sell their land to the town in some creative way? Maybe have it leased back or something to them, but then the town now owns it and it's annexed. I wonder about that. I worry about that. I think it's possible.
Yeah, but that's exactly what happened in the eastern corridor where we have the public works building.
Okay,
It was owned by Longmont. It was sold to the town of Lyons, annexed without a vote, even though some of it was resold to Tamburello. That was what happened. So that it's possible for
It can
anybody,
happen.
public or private, to sell property down and it'd be exempt, which of course, if somebody tried to do an end run there, then the town board would presumably be held accountable for doing that. So,
Any other questions for clarification on staff? Commissioner Dressed, did you? We also
I was just gonna comment that there is also in the Eastern Corridor an example of flagpole annexation. And that was using the right of way that the town owns on the old railroad corridor. That is just a narrow part that went out. But that was used to bring in the property where Grace Designs is located. And all of those things were done very openly, lots of discussion, lots of community input, lots of awareness. So it wasn't one of those things where somebody snuck over to Longmont and said, hey, if you sell us this and we'll do that. It wasn't that at all. It was very open, lots of discussion, lots of participation.
might be appropriate to enter a motion so we can discuss this as a commission. Would someone like to make a motion to approve or deny? Chair cannot do so.
I will move for approval of resolution 2024-07 of the PCDC, a resolution of the Planning and Community Development Commission of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, recommending that the Town of Lyons Board of Trustees adopt an ordinance amending section 15-1-340B2 concerning annexation. And just to make it explicit that it is to reinforce the requirement for a vote on 5 acre to the original size of that plot.
There was a second to the motion proposed.
A second.
Okay, we have a second. Now we may discuss before we have to vote real quick. And this is, amongst the commission, so we can debate the merit of the motion. You can offer your opinion. You can ask staff for more information. It's all allowed. Sharon.
Okay, I'll start, please. So I will be honest, I'm gonna vote no on this. And not because I'm against it. I feel like if the board of trustees wants to do it, that's fine. I kind of feel like it's outside of our purview for what our job is. For this, I feel like right now it's okay for someone to subdivide. It's been that way forever. If it's something that that us as town residents really don't want, then it should go to a vote and let the entire town vote that this is exactly what we want, as opposed to a select few, decide. So I'm not saying, I'd be okay if the board of trustees wanted to do it themselves. I just feel like it shouldn't be us that decides to approve it, to send it to them. I feel like and I could be wrong. I'm newer to this role in the PCDC, but I feel like it's outside of our purview. So.
And you're talking about the lands outside of the Town of Lyons, because there aren't many parcels left that could be subdivided.
Correct, yeah. Just for what the merits is of this and changing the wording. That's all.
And
I'm okay if people think differently too.
Well, just one thought to share is that it is land use.
See, to me, so in my mind, it's not land use, it's the land coming into the town. So it still has to go through a process. So we're not deciding the use of the land. We're deciding if it's okay to bring it into the town, or if it has to go to a vote if it's more than 5 acres. But to me, in my mind, it's not land use. I could be, like I said, I could be persuaded, but that's how I feel for this piece.
Well, the charge to the PCDC includes all broad-based planning for the town. So that, for example, the Lyons primary planning area plan was discussed and voted on by the PCDC. And to me, it fits in that category.
I was reading through the Colorado Constitution today to check all the references here, and I think I came across, we do have some authority as the PCDC. My comments to this are, I think it's adding this language in blue improves this section. And I think Mark made the comment, Mark Browning, that asking everyone or asking people to vote on every single parcel annexation is onerous. I'm actually maybe more in favor of that, though.
Debate for another day, maybe.
Well, in terms of this versus additional language.
I think the applicant was saying if we don't do this, after several dominoes fall, it's likely that the town losing complete distrust without having something like this as a guardrail might end up in us having to approve every annexation by vote. But without this, we don't have to approve every annexation by vote currently.
And just to clear, there's no, this is a town-led initiative.
Sorry about
So there's no applicant here. Just want to make that clear. The motion or the language has been proposed by trustee Browning, but there's no application process. It's town-led.
Thank you for that.
We do have one more comment, and that is that I personally am not aware of any meaningful support or recommendation or thoughts about trying to get around the 5-acre rule. I'm not aware of any on the PCDC, on the BOT, or from town. Now, if someone within the town referenced or sent an email or something, it was not by the directive of the PCDC, and I don't know that the BOT ever commented on it in any way. I would never have supported getting around the 5-acre rule in any way, shape, or form. I doubt anybody else on the PCDC, any of the PCDC groups that I've served with, either as a liaison or as a commissioner, would have done that. Now, they might have created language for a town vote that would modify that would be a possibility, but I never even heard that kind of discussion.
Even if it improves the economic health of town.
Well, that was why the 10-acre rule in the Eastern Corridor was passed, because the citizens of the town recognized that made sense. And that's where you're going to get economic development, if anywhere. Neither the South St. Vrain nor the North St. Vrain would likely support much in the way of economic development. So leaving that as part of the 5-acre rule, it's fine. I don't know. There may be, people who would say, I wish there were no restrictions whatsoever on the town to do whatever it wants. But we live, in a community, and the community has certain rights and privileges, including citizen initiatives, which are binding if they pass. But
It is interesting. I mean, the genesis of the original 5-acre rule was something that was decided, or at least set in motion 22 years ago. And then there's some evidence suggested along the way that that's still the will of the people 22 years later. But I think the fact that these things come up for debate from time to time are really healthy, because it's good to refresh ourselves on the reason for these resolutions. Sometimes they're baked into the whereas statements. You can kind of parse what was happening at the time, but this one doesn't give a lot of help, as a lot of them don't. Personally, I'm not in favor of the 5-acre rule, but I think it's the will of the people and it should be upheld. And if this resolution strengthens it, and it's still the will of the people, which it sounds like it is, then I think the PCDC should pass it. Though if I was, in charge as one person of doing everything, I wouldn't pass it, but.
Can I ask you to repeat something that I didn't quite catch it? So like, if we don't approve this, then the existing language in black is what stands.
Correct.
And with this existing language, what could happen is an owner could subdivide to the point where their smaller parcels are automatically annexed into town. And that could be a large commercial business that wants to.
Yeah, the fear, what kind of colored the canvas for this whole debate was discussion around neighboring properties that were not annexable without a vote because they were larger than 5 acres, but potentially entering into an agreement. And I'm probably going to push for this, but it's basically an easement of some sort that would restrict the property to only be developable within an under 5-acre portion of the property. And that would allow it to potentially be annexed without a vote and to skirt the 5-acre rule. But even then, you know, there's still a development process that requires somebody wanting to actually pay for development, which is a fascinating thing in and of itself. Oh, I'm sorry, please, Mayor Rogan, your hand's been up. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. I just put it up. And so I wanted to maybe just provide a little bit of context, Neil, on top of what you said, which is there is a process that has been in place for a very long time in the county called an illegal subdivision, which I only learned about last spring. I didn't know that people could do this, but you could take a parcel, annex off less than 5 acres of that, and apply for annexation into the town. And if it's less than 5 acres, then it wouldn't need to go to a vote. However, pursuant to the current ordinance, any additional properties that are annexed off there could not be serially annexed into the town without a vote. And I'll leave it to Trustee Browning or Commissioner Drystat, who both have more experience with this than I do in my years, to tell me if I'm wrong, but I just wanted to provide a little bit of context. It has nothing to do with zoning. Zoning occurs when properties are annexed. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Great. And I apologize, I'm not there in person tonight. I am in Chicago.
So the first subdivided parcel could be annexed, but the rest of them could never be unless they're voted.
Right.
Okay, so like it wouldn't just be like now that one's in, then the next one gets in, not like that.
Correct.
Voting for all the remaining subdivided parcels.
It's like,
Now, just for clarity, there may be, and I think it could be a good idea, without changing the 5 acre rule, if a property that's less than 5 acres, I think the town should be able to, it would be a good idea if the town were able to agree with Boulder County that you could have a portion of that rather than the full, say, 4 acres. If in certain circumstances, for example, there's a steep cliff that constitutes part of it, and there's no real reason to have that in the town. It's just a small area that for whatever reason the town may want to include. So I'm not necessarily opposed to any kind of portioning, just any that is greater than 5 acres that the original parcel is greater than 5 acres.
I have another question. So remind me, or please clarify, what was your reaction to what Trustee Browning said about the treatment plant being owned by the town? Was it the treatment plant you mentioned?
Yeah.
That process, that creative acquisition, like, what do you guys think about that?
Or that, no, I'm talking about the maintenance shed.
the idea that there was a public right of way along the tracks that allowed the town property, is that how that works?
Yeah,
We actually own it, it's not our own, it's town property.
Sorry, town property that's the shape of train tracks. That stretches out and allows us to annex a piece of property further out.
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of a one-off, it's a very unique situation. There are no train tracks going that way. The hill. So I don't know how the town would be able to buy a property that would stretch out and, but I mean, it could be done. There's never gonna be in my opinion, this is because I'm not a planner, but there's never gonna be a rule that stops everything ever from being done. That it's kind of like, that's why we have these commissions and boards. We have to review things in public hearings.
I'm just thinking of a large property owner somehow creatively sold their property to the town, which the town might want, you know? What that would look like, because right now that would probably be fine according to the existing ordinance. They'd be exempt from a vote.
One example that came up, and again, it's just sort of, limited memory here, but like, I know that there was some interest in thinking around utilities and water pressure in the town of maybe one property being able to allow the town to build a higher up water tank that would provide more pressure, because there's some pressure problems, but I think it was investigated and kind of maybe decided that it wasn't worth the brain damage, but there are things like that that could come up, yeah.
That could be a really big loophole, I think.
Egress out of, the town that way was another thing that came up for debate, but I don't think we're equipped to have that conversation today.
So my thought, the town did a good thing by, acquiring that property, in the eastern corridor, and it's played out. It's still not developed, but it's still an effective opportunity space for the town, both for commercial and, residential development.
And so if a large property owner decided to give town their land in some sort of agreement, and they wanted to develop a large commercial complex, it would still have to go through a normal chain of review and approval. And then everybody could have their voices heard in hearings. So maybe it's not necessarily a vote, but.
Right. Yeah, it would be done publicly, I guarantee.
Right.
Good questions, I mean,
Yeah.
it helped us all learn the process better, so thank you for that. Any other items for discussion around the motion to approve? Okay, then without further ado, your clicker on the right is to the right for yes, to the left for no. Go ahead and put in your votes. And motion passes 4 or 5-1. Yeah, thank you guys. Okay. We can now adjourn the public portion of the meeting and enter into public workshop. I think I still need a motion to adjourn this, is that right? What's someone motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and let's use your buttons one more time, all in favor? Okay, great, unanimous motion to adjourn. And anyone's welcome to stick around for the public part, but if you need to leave, I understand, because I also would like to leave
What's
sometimes.
the workshop on?
Farmer's market definition and the land use code.
I'll email in my comments.
Good. Thank you, everyone, appreciate it.
Thanks for your service.
Thank
Can I ask you a clarifying question before we get into this?
Yeah.
Again, my daughter and her husband owns Espenman Farm. I do participate. Were on the board, and they participated in discussion as subject matter experts, not to influence the outcome of the vote, but just to provide information. So since I am somewhat aware of how it works, just since my daughter, she talks, I would like to be able to answer questions about the farmers market, activities and lives, but I will withhold vote. I won't vote.
Okay. And then since this is a public workshop, we won't have a straw poll or a vote of any kind, so, but in the future, yeah.
Yeah, just to make it clear.
And farmers aren't allowed to make staff directives.
Right, unless there are objections to that.
I don't think so. Thank you, Barney.
Yeah.
And we all strive to be as transparent as Barney Darcy.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so, we had this, I guess, 2 weeks ago, and let me find, I'm sorry, I should have.
Your family.
Yeah, no, because you two kids.
Sorry?
You have 2 kids?
That was my daughter, and I had 3 kids. That's Agnes, Emerson, and Jack.
We miss Jack.
Yep,
That's
you did
right.
meet Jack. Mr. Beauty did, I think, so. All right, so the original amendment that I had brought, I have changed. So I didn't want to draft a resolution and ordinance. So I think I'm getting there. Travers, you had mentioned kind of how this language here kind of stuck out as it wasn't consistent. We don't have kind of this language anywhere else for our uses. And then you had also provided that you would like to see more parameters around that. So kind of in response, I do think I found where this needs to go. And that's actually, so if you go into our code.
What does it say? I'm sorry, I can't read it.
Oh, this is just, this is the code that we went over 2 weeks ago. But I'm quickly going off of it here in a second, but,
Thank you.
so, but this was the code. It was amendments to add farmers markets as a use by right if they were secondary or accessory to a permitted principal use, or if they were going to be the principal use on the lot, they require a conditional use. So that's kind of the basic idea of what staff is trying to achieve here. And again, the purpose behind this amendment is we have several farmers markets right now that are in operation that we have no legal framework or codified framework for. And we have other individuals that would also, or property owners that would like to have farmers or artisan markets. And just as a reminder, farmers markets aren't just vegetables. It's anything from produce, seasonal fruits, fresh flowers, arts and crafts, and food and beverages. So this kind of encapsulates art markets, all of that. So what I would like to propose and where I would like to propose it, and again, this is completely up to you all. This is just my staff recommendation, is if we go into the code, we have this section. We have, hold on. It's easier just to back all the way out and refine things. We have these Article 10 supplementary regulations. So this is where we kind of put things that have specific regulations around them, but we don't want those regulations, as I stated last meeting, to kind of live in a definition or somewhere where it's hard to find. So this is, and most codes have this. They have a supplementary regulation where, if you have a car wash and you have special requirements, you have another one is
Home businesses.
What?
Home businesses.
Home
Yeah,
businesses
it's great.
or laundry or the dry cleaners are always in here. They're always in supplemental regulations. But this is where you put things. We have home businesses. This is where STRs live. This is where ADUs live, where you have specific regulations for a certain use. So it's my recommendation that we just tag, if you all decide to move forward and the BOT decides to move forward, that we just create a new section 161090, and that becomes farmers markets. So that way the use table is clean, the definition is clean, and then we add all of our regulation to this. So what I have done here is, again, trying to keep all things constant. Sorry, I've got 1,000 windows open. This is the new section 161090 farmers markets. Yeah, I'm sorry. And so it follows kind of the formatting of the ones before. So farmers markets, districts permitted shall be unlawful to operate or to cause or permit the operation of a farmer's market except in the following zone districts. CEC, use by right. And again, this all has to be spelled out in our use table as well, but this is redundancy for good reason, I hope. C, use by right, secondary or associated with a permitted principal use. A conditional use permit shall be required if not secondary, associated with a permitted principal use. And commercial downtown is the same language. This is, right now, I need it, and this was requested at the last meeting. Right now, we do not have these parameters on farmers markets. So if right now you're in the CEC and you're conducting a farmers market, by changing this language, we are indeed also changing the permission that they have, that they've had. If, and I don't know if there's farmers markets right now in the CEC, but just that, I want this board to understand that by changing this section or changing the definition, it's going to change that entitlement for CEC as well, unless we bifurcate that somehow, which I think will make it a bit messy. It just needs to be one section. So, you know, these are somewhat arbitrary, but it seemed like hours of operation and kind of frequency of operations were, at least to me, what stuck out from your conversations last time. So, you know, just taking kind of a sample of both noise ordinances and farmers markets or ordinances, maintaining that farmers markets shall only be operated from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And that's, in general, I think nobody's going to come to a farmer's market at 9 o'clock at night. I don't know, maybe that's where the food and beverage bit comes in. And then,
Well, let's finish, if you don't mind, let me finish and then we'll.
Yeah.
and then the only last one is the frequency of operation is farmer's market shall only be operated twice per week. Again, I did not go into detail about how often per month or, you know, trying to keep this as simple as possible, just because we have not had these regulations. And we run the risk of changing what people are doing that we have not received complaints for. And I think that's important here, is that right now we have farmers markets that are somewhat unfettered in their authority to operate. And by introducing these, we're creating a code that we've never received complaints about. So again, it's my staff recommendation is if it is a desire to put some parameters, trying to keep those as broad as possible. But again, that's just my recommendation. And with that, I'm done.
I might add that like enforcement's always an issue with this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's no farmer's market police being branded and put into service that will go around. And so it's really like, if someone were to complain about something, this would give the town like enforcement parameters to be able to go in and say, you're doing it more than twice a week, you're doing it outside of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. therefore you must stop, right? So it's, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's kind of the functional purpose of this. So with that in mind, let's open it for, you know, discussion. But
Yeah, well, okay.
yeah, we're workshop too, so just go nuts.
Okay, so we know several farmers markets in town. Do all of them only operate like only on one day? I mean, like, I know that's the main stage, there are some markets.
Well, the only one I'm thinking of is if you put this into action, are you now, are you
If there has, yeah.
Are you defining Planet Bluegrass's vendor section as a farmer's market now?
That's a good question. I didn't even think about that. But that's part of, that's the full.
Yeah, I think that would
That's
be
a
an
separate-
amenity of that, at least my read as a
Yeah.
planner, that would be an amenity
You
of
had a
that
really
use.
pissed off neighbor that wanted to like find some leverage about why to shut down Planet
You know,
Bluegrass.
we'd probably have to dig into the PUD.
That's the
agreement.
only one I could think of for to answer your question.
Well, okay, because yeah, where I'm going with this, if you haven't had any complaints, you just want to be able to set some parameters. How are current farmers markets operating that aren't, so that we aren't limiting them, but yeah, for example, like, we know Main Stage has their arson market on Sundays. Only on Sunday, I think, and Eli has their market, they have a market or a mode.
They do, but this
Yeah.
code is in writing of no knowledge of how those businesses run. their
Yeah,
farmers
okay, I'm
markets,
just-
because it's not a permit, it's not an application, so I don't
Yeah.
have that information.
You know that online right now, the Boulder County, their Wednesday evening market goes from 3:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. So I honestly do think it should go to maybe 7:30 or even 8 o'clock, but.
You could say operated sunrise to sunset.
Or sunrise to sunset, or even that.
Please
Yeah,
no.
I'm 14.
I will, I don't put my foot down very often, but I don't know if Cassidy's still on, but as she is the new code enforcement person,
Oh, fair enough.
I don't want her having to, you know, like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's
And,
sunset, yeah.
it's easy to do this,
Fair,
it's
there
hard to
are-
do this.
There are posted sunrise and sunset hours.
I guess you're right, but
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
still
there you go.
arbitrary, because if you work your way around the hill a little bit
But
from the
then-
complaint.
That's fair. Thank you.
But later on the summer sunsets earlier. Anyways, in the summertime, it's nice to be able to open up later because that's how farmers markets are often.
I just, as a general note and kind of the the spirit of code changes and discussions with PUDs, noise and kind of the effects of crowds have been very much expressed by a few members of the community. So this is again trying to, we do have an outdoor activity overlay that has its own set of noise regulations, and if this needs to match those time constraints, I can definitely see that. But again, this is just, this was just for discussion.
It's just a starting point.
Yeah.
On that point, Andrew, I was wondering, like, so if Planet Bluegrass decides to have farmers markets, then does it follow, do the farmers markets amplify sound and have music in accordance with Planet Bluegrass's agreement on noise, or do they follow the outdoor activities? Which one is it for a farmers market at Planet Bluegrass? It's associated with PB.
So noise complaints, if it's 25 feet off the source, it doesn't matter unless it falls under different permissions with the outdoor activity overlay. But a noise complaint, unreasonable noise, you can make a complaint anywhere in town, no matter what zoning district you're in. So Planet Bluegrass could get a complaint any time of day.
To answer your question, I think it's the most restrictive rule. No, I'm sorry. If there's not a specific definition in the PUD, it's the most restrictive rule left available, right? So like if Planet Bluegrass is allowed to have amplified music because of their PUD, then this doesn't prohibit them from having amplified music because it says something in the farmer's market definition about it.
They can still have amplified music for their farmers market, on their property.
I believe so.
According to their agreement, annexation agreement on noise.
You have a real skill for finding the gray slivers. Which is great.
I know, that's where people can work the loopholes.
No,
and that's when
no,
things get out of
it's-
hand.
No, that's exactly what
But that's also.
the
code
lawyers do,
interpretation.
and you've been around that, where they know how to, yeah, exactly.
I see it all the time.
Yeah, I
So-
don't disagree,
So the noise ordinance, unreasonable noise will always, that is, no matter who it is, no matter where it is, I can call in if I'm a citizen or not and call in that complaint. That's always gonna be your highest governance. Now, as far as farmers markets go, I don't think I can do more research. I don't think it's a use by right to have amplified sound wherever you are within the town. But
Unless it's in the definition somehow. like
that's
apply,
right.
But then you're
Or
in the area.
you're in the outdoor, activity overlay.
Right.
There's other places.
Codes have to be interpreted a lot, so I think this is one of those, it's like if somebody had, they do have amplified music, but I don't think I'm pretty sure every amplified sound in Lions violates the sound ordinance, if someone wanted it to.
I mean, a truck
Just
at a
one
farmer's
problem.
market playing music and selling beats at the same time is amplified music.
You can hear it 25 feet away, but you
I can see
can.
Dwight Schrute out there right now, hawking beats and listening to whatever, and if it's 25 feet away from the source, it can be registered as a noise complaint.
I think about one citizen who's angry versus everyone who's enjoying the farmer's market. I think of I don't know if Spirit Hound had amplified music, but I can think of Yellow Barn, which isn't in Lions, right?
Spearhound does have amplified music.
Outdoors.
Yeah.
When you buy tickets for the festival, you go out back in the tent, they're having amplified music, and then, Yellow Barn Farm, they'll have like their farmers markets and they have amplified music too. And so I'm just wondering if like our venues in town like PB and Riverbend and Farmette can also have farmers markets with amplified music then, and is that under their noise agreement that they have in place, or is it the outdoor noise overlay that you mentioned? Which one applies?
So-
Commissioner Nath, so this is Mayor Rogan. I don't know if you guys can still see me, but I might be able to provide some clarification here. So number one, I do believe that the board is going to consider a revised noise ordinance at some point. So that's not on the agenda yet. We haven't discussed it with staff yet, but we definitely heard that we need to take a look at that. My understanding is that the PUDs, the different PUDs, so for example, the PUD with Planet Bluegrass and their keynotes, they really specify what activities are allowed on the planet. and when and the number of them. We went through last term, we went through, gosh, probably 9 months of renegotiation about that. My understanding is that this is more related to, hey, we noticed that like Moxie's having an every other Friday market, and there's this market and there's that market, and it's not expressly permitted in the zones. So let's just do a quick cleanup so that it is, because people really seem to like it. But in terms of music, I think the normal rules would apply to whatever the rules the property are under, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and as far as sound, and this is it's not even a discussion for this board, but where your noise and within your PUD, where that noise, where that kind of enabling language is different across the board. Sometimes it's in the annexation agreement, sometimes it's in the PUD, sometimes it's in a development agreement. It's just been done differently over time. I will admit that noise issues were not a very big worry for this code change for me, especially the 7-to-7 parameters. And we've never gotten a complaint. So again, you try to fix a problem, you might create another, but as far as fixing the problem that we have right now, again, it's staff recommendation to try to keep it as broad as possible without trying to open up a noise ordinance within a farmer's market.
You can always amend it later.
Yeah, I do have a comment that, this is, as you were just indicating, sort of what's the minimum required code language to permit them to operate kind of the way they have.
Yep.
The Boulder County, farmers market has 34 pages of very dense regulations. And, maybe worth glancing through those, not to come up with 34 pages. I think that would be the wrong thing to do, and absolutely don't need it, at least in my opinion. But there are a couple of things that we may want to, or you may want to ask Attorney Dittman about. Does this language put farmers markets into the category that requires a business license and the collection of taxes?
So if, and I can get Brandon's interpretation as well, if it's an accessory or secondary use, it would fall under that same, because it's an amenity of that property. Unless it's somebody, you have somebody that's coming in, they're leasing your parking lot, then that would likely, if it's not the person with the permit for the principal use, then yes, I think that would set up this situation where you might have to have another business license. If it's through a conditional use permit, and it's the principal use, then yes, it would certainly require a permit.
Okay, so I guess my question is this language sufficient for that? And then the second, and it may well be, the second is Boulder County Health Department regulation. Does that need to be referenced, or should there be, for example, a paragraph that says, farmers market participants must comply with all applicable state and county rules and regulations, something to that effect? I don't know. I mean, we don't want to get into the detail of the 34 pages by any stretch, but there are a couple of things like that you may want to just look at to see whether it makes sense for there to be some comment about it, some way of.
Yeah.
I can get okay. Oh, and fire, that's the other thing. Farmers markets sometimes have, for example, fire roasted peppers. And so they have, a fire going, and then if you're going to do like meals, which would be a good thing, farmers market meals are great, on site, then people are heating tortillas and, doing various things, which may or may not involve flame. And so I'm wondering if there should be a reference to, fire code.
I think Barney brings up a really excellent point. I don't know if you looked at other, longstanding farmers markets policies to see how they've been operating, but I think that would be good.
In the land use code, I think in Lyons, all the other applicable codes are referenced, aren't they? National Electric Code, yeah. So I don't think we have to list them expressly. You're gonna say that.
And again, I will go with any direction from the PCDC. Again, I want to make it clear that if you require these things, the three farmers markets that are in operation, if we're making things more restrictive for property owners that are already operating without complaint, I think they should probably be invited to the table for the PCDC to talk about it. Because if these things haven't been required, and then all of a sudden we have a code enforcement issue next Saturday, or, if this 30 days after this was adopted, I think some people would be very upset that this was kind of under the radar. So if it's the goal of this was to come in as broadly as possible, but if it's the kind of the will of the PCDC to dig into farmers market regulation, then we certainly need a bigger public process.
Well, here's the thing,
And that's not
the reason for wanting to check a little bit with, Brandon is once the town says, this is permitted, then issues could arise. For example, crazy unlikely event that a farmer's market created a fire that spread. The town, that could be a problem for the town. If, for example, several people went to the farmer's market and then suffered botulism poisoning, and there was no requirement for them to meet health regulations, could that be a question for the town? And I'm not trying to define the things that should be in here. I'm just saying that it should be a discussion with legal to determine if it's better to include those kinds of things, or is it, just stepping in, and because I know it's a slippery slope, I totally understand that.
Sure.
Every time you add something, you have 5 other things that follow from it, but I just bring them up as potential issues.
Sure. And I will say, I've gone over the previous, much less restrictive code that was drafted 2 weeks ago with Brandon, and no concern of those comments came up. And every resolution that comes before you all has been reviewed by Brandon as well.
Usually the PDF says didn't edits.
That should still, but at any rate, if more clarification is needed, that's fine.
I mean, I would love to see what Boulder does. I don't know if we
Yeah,
can
I said-
operate like a big Boulder, but I think it's important to just look and make sure we're thinking things through. Maybe, Brandon wasn't thinking about tortillas on fire. Like.
I sent a copy of the applicant rules and regulations from Boulder County.
So not as a necessarily a member of this commission, but as a practitioner, as an architect, like there are all kinds of rules that you're just on the hook for knowing. Like for instance, if you're driving in rural Boulder County, you should know the speed limit, even if you didn't pass a sign that shows you what it is, right? But the same rules apply with like the electric code and the state health department and all these other overriding regulations. I think it's totally worth asking the question to our lawyer of like, hey, we thought about like a fire or like a massive food poisoning event. Like, does that put us on the hook? Should we double think this? But I don't think we have to go through and list, those things. I actually think not listing them sometimes is the better approach, because otherwise the code gets really messy.
Yeah.
But
Might be superseding.
this is a land use document, so I think the things that we mentioned are land use related, and even the operating hours is probably a little overreaching, but I think the spirit of it's right. And again, that's my opinion as a practitioner. I don't know if that's the board's opinion. Yeah.
If it's land use, I agree with that. I am personally not thinking about starting a kombucha business, and I have no experience in this, and selling my kombucha right away, which will probably make people sick. I'm like, oh my gosh, I could do this now. What's stopping me? Nothing. And there's probably other people like me who want to have a small business and
You
try
can't
something
do
out.
it.
I can't.
I mean, you would have to own and operate a piece commercially, and
Main stage.
Oh, I could have I could
Oh,
have
you
a
got it.
table at
Yeah, sure,
main
yeah.
stage,
Oh, yeah.
right? And I could start talking to
I
LLC
mean, you
in
could
2
do it
minutes.
this Saturday. if
Yes,
they'd
I
let you.
might.
Let's play that out. If I go to main stage and drink your first batch of kombucha and I get sick, I'm gonna be mad at main stage. Isn't it kind of on them?
But it's not our job to make sure that main stage hires a lawyer, it does this in a way that
Right.
protects them, that's
Is it
their
main
job.
stage's responsibility or liability?
Yes,
It's on
everything they
their
do is their
Anything on
liability.
their property.
Yeah,
We have to always remind ourselves that it
Well,
stops
she's-
at land use, but it's not a very sharp line a lot of the times, so.
Well,
So I just don't wanna solve too many problems that aren't present.
I love this,
just-
though, I think it's great.
It is interesting. I mean,
I will be honest, when I
understand,
introduced this, I was like, okay, there's not been one Kobe yet.
Yeah.
This is it, and this has been the most controversial one yet. It's nuts.
I think
But
the term farmer's market, I think it comes with a lot of surprising weight. If you had said flea market or craft market or wares market or something, I think this would have just right on through,
Flea
but
market falls into this?
This is it, yeah, flea market said pretty much, this is pretty much what this
No,
is.
flea market
It does not
doesn't,
fall into this.
you can't sell used goods
Right.
under our farmer's
Remember
market.
at the
definition.
top, it's like fruits and.
but even then, like, I think it's just, yeah, well, I think this is true in my work too, the more stuff people have a connection to, everyone has some experience with the farmer's market.
Yeah.
The more stuff people have
Yeah.
connection to, the harder it is to agree on it, because we'll have
On what it
preconceived
is.
notions about what it is.
I guess if you have some old t-shirts that you wanna get rid of and you paint birds on it,
And now it's art.
and it's art.
Well,
Repurpose.
Well, think of it this way, when I teach architecture, if you want students to learn about architecture, don't ask them to design a home, ask them to design something they're completely unfamiliar with, like a cemetery. Cause that will actually have them think about the thing that they're
Yeah.
designing and not what they already think and know about the thing they think they're designing. But I think it's the same with land use too, it's like farmers markets are really hard, because we all have a relationship with them in some ways.
Yeah, and to be honest, the flea market came up, the reason why the conditional use for if it's the principal use is to ensure that we don't have, 24/7 flea markets, you
Yeah.
know? Again,
We can,
this is,
let me just stop, we could do a straw poll that's allowed, just to
Sure.
give our opinion of like, if we were to vote today, we're not obviously, but what would we vote? To just understand the temperature of where the commission is. Because we may not need to pitch this back to Andrew to tweak more, like there may be one or two of us that have a problem and the rest of us are fine, and that would actually be okay as a commission, because that's how we function, right?
That's right. I
So-
like having a definition of farmer's market. This has some parameters around it, which I like, 2 days, 7 to 7, or whatever the times you choose. I don't know if that includes setup time or not and deconstruction time, but whatever. It's helpful to know. Versus not having this.
Commissioner Scott, you wanted
Yeah,
to?
couple things here, well, the 7 AM to 7 PM, that's the same hours of the recycling center, just to let you know. I mean, if it matters, it's just something people know, because I know I tried to go there at 7:30, like on this, I don't know, Sunday evening, and they have a gate shut me out, so. I was like, it really was, I wasn't trying to be unreasonable.
Maybe a farmer's market could be in that parking lot.
Exactly, second, we brought this up kind of, so like, remember when Ralph was in town and he had basically his own, was that today we go for farmer's market, how would that have fallen under this? I'm just curious.
Just a store.
It was a store, right? Yeah, it was a store, so it wasn't necessarily,
Owned the,
yeah, did he own?
he had control of the property.
Okay, so yeah, so
Owned
it is different, so that's why I was going with, that actually was a different use then. So, okay, I just wanted, just trying to clarify some perception and understanding and what might be going on, okay?
Can we entertain a straw poll? Would you guys be up for that? Does anyone feel like that's out of your bounds? Okay, so if the language proposed by Planner Bowen for discussion today was a resolution and we were voting on it now, if you were in favor, would you raise your hand?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to be, insensitive to like further discussion and educating ourselves and doing more, but I think for the purposes of getting this on the books, we should probably move forward with it. And then if we need to edit it after the fact, we can do that, even though that's messy and not ideal. I do think Barney's suggestion as a staff directive of, could you take a peek at this document
and I did read through it when I got it.
Yeah, and it seems like it probably covers just about anything you could think of, so it's a good resource just to double check what you're proposing, so maybe there's an edit between now and then that you might be compelled by, and that sounds good too. And
I was just wondering, the Boulder County is on park property, right, or park, it's It's
It
not
is.
private property,
On
so
the
is
Boulder
that
Creek here.
why?
In Boulder, it's Boulder Street right away. In Longmont, it's Boulder County owned property.
Fairgrounds, right?
The fairgrounds, yeah.
I just wonder if it's so dense.
That level of
because
liability.
It's on there.
That would be my assumption, is since the county, it's the county's land, they're approving the vendors, they're approving. They have much more baked in. To be honest, this is letting. You don't hear this from planners very often, but this is letting the private market just take care of its own self and needs and self-regulate.
We can't have it in Bone Park. No, we can't have it. in
Well, this
Park.
isn't zone, no, this is only in CCC and CD.
But if somebody wanted to have a farmer's market in the park, we'd have to go through this again.
Yeah, we'd add a number 4 for that zone, and then we would also edit the zoning table.
Well, they do have and they have a
to add
festival where they've
US.
done markets in the park, but on that,
Permit.
by
Yeah.
the town.
You get a permit
Yeah.
for that.
So on
Yeah.
the permit question, so just because of like you bring up like liability and stuff, then it's on the property owner, like Main Stage, for instance. Does Main Stage need to pull a permit like they would to have alcohol being served for an event? Pull a permit for a farmer's market to be, just to make sure that they have consulted with fire and any other, organizations that might have a say in, the land being used a little differently than they normally use it.
Yeah, I think this sets up that framework that now, since it's not a use that's
Secondary.
not allowed, now we're allowing it, but since it's codified, it's in our code, it's a use, so now you have to come in and that has to be a part of your permit. The town needs to know about it,
So they need to get a permit to have a farmer's market, even though they're allowed to here, they still need to get a permit and that's set somewhere.
well, every business has to have a permit.
So I guess what she's asking is, does a farmer's market fall within their allowance?
They're allowed.
Having a
They need a
restaurant?
special permit, yeah.
Again, I would say
Okay,
that
alright.
if it's an amenity of that business and they're wanting to use their parking lot on a Saturday, it's part of their business.
No, that's a land use issue, because parking is.
Yeah. Or if they wanna, whatever,
They're
but
rear garden. They're rear
yeah,
garden,
that- if that is something that they're using to bolster their commerce, then this is allowing them to do so, but setting up some basic framework. But no, I would hope that if Main Stage, since they've been doing it, or I don't wanna use any examples, if business A has been doing this for the past 4 years without any hiccups, nobody's complained, to my knowledge, then setting up a bunch of permitting process for them to keep doing what they have been doing with no complaint. I would personally, not personally, professionally be hesitant to do so.
This still requires interpretation by staff, but it
Yeah.
sets up the framework and intention, which I think is the point of land use, so I'm fine with this.
So just for clarification, so a dance studio that doesn't do any food sales of any kind, but has a parking lot,
Mhm.
they could do it.
If they're in this zone and they wanna do it,
I've seen things like that, where they have like a Saturday, I was like, oh, our dance studio, we're bringing
But then
sale, yeah.
requirements of that business don't include things that, for example, a parking lot for a restaurant.
Just about to say, I don't think any of these places can actually do one in a parking lot legally, because they have to have required code parking.
Well, isn't that what the coffee shop is doing?
Correct, that's what I'm saying, like, we can't, there's enforcement issues, so like, if someone wants to enforce that, then they have to show how they're providing off-street parking required by the land use code, which they're not, and they're in violation, but we don't have a badged farmer's market police patrolling the town yet.
I think that should be the next recommendation. from PCD.
We just trolled the board.
I'm a farmer's market inspector, I love it, I can see a whole new
Yeah,
movie.
it's on Cassidy, that's on her.
Added duties assigned.
Boulder County has a staff.
Oh, yeah.
It's not actually Boulder County, it's Boulder County Farmers Market,
Yeah.
BCFM, which is an entity on itself.
Yeah, and I believe it's a special use permit, that I'd have to go and talk to city staff. But I believe it's a town-run event, but it's either a nonprofit, somebody has a special use permit. So
BCFM.
there's, and that's a huge farmer's market. I guess
It's one of the biggest in the country.
Yeah, I guess comparison wise, kind of a business using, and we'll go back to the dance studio. If it's a fundraiser and, you know, they wanna sell donuts and sweaters to raise money for a dance event in Tallahassee, then this is giving them the right to do so, if they fall into the correct incentive
I was
district.
gonna ask about fundraiser. Fundraiser falls into this. Girl Scouts hanging out with their tables.
So you can have a, you can have a studio in your backyard that someone lives in, but they're not supposed to because it's a studio. You can have a farmer's market that functions as a fundraiser, but it's whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, as long as as long as they meet the definition,
It's enforcement
farmer's
again.
market.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't care if the money is going towards
Yeah,
raising capital or fundraising, you know, it's the definition. And again, we're very vague in our definition, and I think maybe on purpose, I don't know. I don't know the history of that regulation.
And so the town doesn't care in terms of like tax revenue if it's a nonprofit farmer's market.
Let's consider, since it is 8:30 and Andrew is losing his mind.
Again.
This is great, I love it. But if you guys are comfortable with ending the workshop, I think we've done a good job of kind of dicing and slicing here, and you feel comfortable coming forward with another resolution when the time is fit. And if you have a chance to review, brush through the Boulder regulations, you'll do that. Okay. I don't think we have to adjourn or anything. We're just done in workshop if we're ready to be done. And if you want to attack Andrew on the way out and ask more questions, I encourage it. There always is the opportunity to us on the agenda to bring up any additional items for future discussion. So just for the sake of bringing it up, does anyone have anything you want to add or announce or ask to bring up for later meetings?
If you all, I haven't heard back from everyone about July 15th, just because I do need to get that in the queue, just straw poll. You know,
It's a joint meeting if you don't check your emails.
That's right, yeah,
it'll be at 5:30 on July
yeah,
15th.
no, I can.
You know, if we can just have quorum, that's fine. Not all of you, you know, it's a recorded meeting, so if you can't make it, that's fine. You can come back and watch it. Whether it's joint or not, I would still like Dola to come, even if you all can't make it. And,
Well, we need to check off 2 a year.
yeah. So, it'll be, especially since the resolution didn't pass, it'll be good to kind of move that forward as well.
We have 1 yes so far.
I'm a yes for the 15th. I will not be on the 8th.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a yes.
Three,
We have 4.
four, okay, we're good.
All right, with that, we shall adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Well, I'm gonna be sitting out here selling some wares. If anybody wants anything.
Yeah, we'll be the code enforcer and we'll make sure you're checking your taxes, you're
I
paying your
used to
taxes.
make
down.
some really good mead, back in the day.
Cool.